Right after I posted yesterday's piece on the death of social search, I moved on to the rest of my day's work, drumming up buzz within the WordPress community for the WordPress helpers. And it was not my best day. I engaged a few influential WordPress geeks and I ran afoul, it seems, of the rules. Now, just as the idea, hey, it's not personal, it's just business, is one of those things you need to find a middle ground with if you want to maintain any sense of humanity, the next thing I have to say also requires some very careful navigation. You ready? Business has no rules. But let me say that more specifically. Business has no rules, not even in the WordPress community. Now, of course, business does have rules, but we're living in an era when discerning what those rules are feels more and more like an exercise in futility. Respect reasonable hours of the day? Call versus write? Be polite? Well, none of the above seem to apply anymore unless someone tells you they do, and often they do so right after and then again before they've ignored the very rule they're quoting at you. Well, in the aftermath of yesterday's WordPress community fiasco, I wrote an open letter to the WordPress community, and you can see it at thewordpresshelpers.com or by visiting their Twitter account at WPHelpers. And if there's too much in there for you to process, let me simplify. My point, the real point, is that without rethinking pretty much everything you've ever learned about business, you're going to start encountering a lot of difficult issues moving forward as we get further and further separated by the tools that are supposedly pulling us closer and closer together. And that might seem like a rough way for me to cap off my year here, but consider it from a more optimistic standpoint. You're here, and we're here to help. I'm the Answer Guy, and I'll be back.